the left is a student who is hardworking, quiet, and gets good grades. But to the right is a non-hardworking student, loud, showing off, and doesn't get good grades. The hardworking student is doing his work. He's sitting down, working on his computer, studying for his test. The non-hardworking student is not doing his work. He's sitting on the table, playing on his phone, not studying for his test. Test day. The student who studied is confident and smiling, while the other student is frustrated and nervous and can't do his work. The student who studied got an A+, while the student who didn't study got an F. The student who was quiet and studied now walks away with a smile on his face, whilst the student who was a loudmouth and didn't study just stands there with a frown on his face. So, to make a circle, I used x plus a variable squared plus y equals a variable squared equals that. However, before I did that, I had to put letters so that I can change the variables, and then once I'm satisfied, I will just copy and paste them into the equation. I did that for all the circles. To cut the circles, all I did was just add restrictions of y and x axis to cut and get rid and only show the parts that I only wanted to show. For the sunglasses, I did a parabola, a simple vertex form equation, and used the same method of restrictions to cut and shape the sunglasses to what I wanted to show. To make vertical and horizontal lines, all I needed to do was put y equals a number with restrictions. In order to do that and have the shading, I simply switched out the equals with a greater and equal to variable. To do the angles, the straight angle seen here, I simply use y equals mx plus c and use the same style of restrictions to cut it off as the length I wanted. For this cell phone to move, I used basic y equals a variable, and I incorporated a letter into the restriction for y because I wanted it to move horizontally, so that means I needed to change the restriction. For x, to make it move, I incorporated it as x equals a variable plus q because x was already a horizontal line, so I needed it to move left to right and not touch the restrictions that I have set already. For the duck lips, it's pretty much the same as I've described earlier. It's circles that I've used restrictions to cut and shape into that form. To give the fingers a typing effect, for the x equals a number, I have added the restriction as normal, and I have added a slider in one of the restriction because I want the other one to stay in place, and I only want one to move up and down, showing fingers moving up and down. For the vertical lines, it's essentially the same thing. However, it's with y equals mx plus c, just a different equation. However, the same concept of having another variable in one of the restrictions, not two. Same goes for the other one. To make the sweat drop, I have created a circle, regular circle with a restriction. However, I needed to make it move up and down, so I put a variable into the y restriction, the y squared, and that would allow it to move up and down. However, since I have incorporated a restriction, that keeps the circle from maintaining its semicircle going up and down. Therefore, I needed to add another variable for the restriction. That means that when I have the sliders placed, I need to time them perfectly so that it so that the circle may move up and down while staying at this roughly the same size. The same goes for the cones. It's basically two slopes that are put together and used y equals mx plus c form. So to do that, I added a slider in front of c because c is the y-intercept, meaning that it'll move up and down. And the same goes for that. I needed to time it perfectly with the circle in order for it to look as though they're going up and down together.